I had to laugh because I went to my home church, the church I grew up in, on Sunday. And she started off the sermon saying she was going to do a sermon series after Easter on the Ten Commandments. And guess what I'm doing after Easter? So she's a Sunday ahead of me, so she said she would just email me her sermon, and I could just give that one then each Sunday. No one's going to know in Southwest Iowa, Southern Minnesota. I'm just kidding. But it was kind of curious that we're doing the same thing. I'm sure there's been thousands of sermon series done on the Ten Commandments. But I always thought it interesting to take and look at each of the commandments. So we'll do that for the next, 10 weeks, the way the commandments are. And we'll take a look to see how the different ones still apply to us and how they speak to us now in the 21st century versus thousands of years ago when they were first given to the Israelites. But today I want to talk about why the commandments are still relevant for us today. That they're not just a set of 10 laws or commands that were given to, I can't show you that yet, that were given to the Israelites thousands of years ago. It was a speed reader. How many of the commandments can we name? I just read you some of them from the translation. That's the translation of the Message. So it sounded a little different than what we're used to, but I like the way Eugene Peterson kind of uses different words in more contemporary language to make the Bible start out. But if I were to ask you to name all 10 commandments, do you think we could get all 10? If someone were to come to you in the street and say, what are the 10 commandments? I see some heads nodding yes. Sunday school teachers, they're overachievers sometimes, so. I'm not sure I could have got all 10 commandments when someone would have asked me. I probably could have got close. I'm fairly sure I couldn't have gotten them in the right order. There was a survey done in 2007 that said most Americans could rattle off the ingredients of a Big Mac instead of all 10 commandments. That's easy, 2 all-beef patties, lettuce, special sauce, cheese, on a sesame seed bun. Isn't that how the song goes? Now, when you go home, what was the sermon about? Big Mac, I'm hungry. But it's amazing, if we ask somebody to name all 10 commandments, if you walk up on the street and say, what are the 10 commandments? You might get a funny look. Somebody will give you 4 or 5. But if you ask, or you talk about, should we have the 10 commandments in a courthouse? Or in a federal building? Or should we have them displayed in a school? We've all seen or read about the debates over that. And I'm sure we've all seen the movie, or at least parts of it, of Charlton Heston as Moses in that movie, The 10 Commandments. I was watching some of the clips I have on a website where I get some movie for that, and they had just one. It didn't really apply today, but I was watching it, and I'm thinking to myself, the only thing I can think of is, wow, that is a lot of overacting going on in that movie. But the 10 Commandments are an important part of our society, even if we don't even understand exactly what they mean. Or maybe we don't understand completely how they still apply to us. I was spending the weekend with Isaac, and we were making our sandbox. We were making it for him. And as we were working on it, for some reason I got to be thinking about the sermon this Sunday, and I got wondering why the commandments maybe don't hold as much power for us, or we don't know them as well as we used to. And as I'm asking Isaac to help me, the polite questions go from, would you give me this, to commands, to Isaac, get me that, or Isaac, stop it. And I was thinking to myself, we don't like to be commanded. I think around our house, we're trying to teach the boys to use the word please, of course, to be polite. But invariably, the first thing is, Dad, give me some cereal. Dad, get this, or Mom, get that. And the original response to someone who commands you to do something like that is no, right? We don't like to be commanded to do anything. We like to be asked. So maybe that's a reason some of the commandments don't quite hold the power, or we don't understand them, or they don't kind of influence our life maybe as much as they used to. But we need rules to live by. And these are really the first set of rules, or one of the first sets of rules that God gave His people. In essence, rules that God gave us. So why should we study the Ten Commandments, or why or how can they talk to us today? Well, I thought, besides the fact that God gave them to us, and Jesus says that we're supposed to follow God's law, these commandments talk about God's character. They give us a glimpse of the way that God is. Look at the way the context and the way the commandments were given. On the morning of the third day there was thunder and lightning, with a thick cloud over the mountain and a very loud trumpet blast. Everyone in the camp trembled. Then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was covered with smoke because the Lord descended on it in fire. The smoke billowed up from it like smoke from a furnace. The whole mountain trembled violently, and the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder. Then Moses spoke, and the voice of God answered him. I wonder why God went to all of that fanfare to give those commandments to those people. The smoke, the darkness, the thunder, the lightning, the earthquakes. Why all of that? These people had experienced the power of God ever since leaving Egypt, and even in Egypt, with the plagues, the miraculous rescue from the Egyptian army. They'd seen God at work. But God still knows that drama communicates. He knows that if we remember things better, people remember things better, if there's a little bit more flair put to them. Would have been quite as authoritative, I suppose, if Moses just would have walked up and walked down the mountain with a couple stone tablets and said, here's the law that God gave me. Probably was more effective for the people to see the presence of God and to hear the presence of God, knowing that God gave these commands. God was showing them how holy He was, how powerful He was. And He was saying that these commandments are to be taken seriously. They're not the 10 suggestions. They're not the 10 habits of highly successful people. They're not the 10 keys to success. They're not 10 good ideas. They're the 10 commandments. They're to be taken seriously. So God is reminding us that He is the author and the creator of the universe. And if He tells us we're supposed to do something, it's probably a good idea to listen to Him. Another reason that we go with these, why we bother with these old laws, I suppose, is that they give us an identity as a people. They set us apart from others. I've asked this question in confirmation before, and I asked Group 316 kids on Wednesday night. I says, what does it mean that we're Christians? What does it mean that we call ourselves Christians, or that we go to church, or we come to our Group 316 meeting, or we come to confirmation and we learn about this stuff? Does that make us any different than anybody else? And like good kids, they answer, no, we're not different than anybody else. And they're right. And they were thinking, they're not set apart, they're not special, they're not supposed to think of themselves as holier than thou and all that. And they said, we're all the same because God loves us all the same. Well, they had learned one thing that we hadn't been talking about, is that God does love everybody the same, whether, you're Christian, Muslim, Hindu, whatever. We're all children of God, and He loves us the same. But what I wanted them to think about, and the confirmation kids to think about, is if we do call ourselves Christians, if we do follow God, does it make a difference in our lives? If people were to look at us and say, hey, there's something different about him, there's something different about her, is that something that would be evident in our lives as we live it? That's what I wanted the kids to think about, what I wanted us to think about. And what the commandments give us is a way to kind of set ourselves apart from others. Not that we set ourselves above others, but just apart. A way that we get along with each other, in a way that we should get along with God. Because these commandments are not just a set of 10 hard and fast rules. Is it ever okay to murder somebody? Is it ever okay to lie? The question was always presented. You're a Jewish family living at home. The Nazis come and knock on your door and say, and you answer the door, is your wife and children home? Is it okay okay to lie to that situation and say no? Or do you always have to tell the truth? When it talks about property, slaves, women, donkey, children, kind of lumps them all in the same category. We certainly don't think the same way about things of that nature today. Is it ever okay to steal? The only way your family's ever going to eat, taking some extra bread from a bakery? Is that ever justified? The commandments can be interpreted, and we'll talk more about that as we go through each individual commandment. But they're not a set of hard and fast rules that have to be followed all the time. Or I shouldn't say that. They're not a set of hard and fast rules that can be interpreted black and white all the time. There's been interpretations as the way we go. I don't know the exact number. I think it's over 600 laws that the Jewish faith has come up with to help us follow these original set of 10 laws. So interpretation has been going on for as long as they've probably been around. But they are not primarily guides for good behavior. They're not merely symbols either. Their power comes from their relationship and how they help us be in relationship with God and with each other. Because you have to remember that God just didn't come down and give these Israelites these rules out of nowhere. He saved them from a life of slavery in Egypt. He's leading them into the promised land, a place where they will live a blessed life if they can follow the rules and the covenant. He gives it to them on a very personal level. In one verse in Exodus, he talks about what he did for them and all of the personal pronouns that are in the sentence. He says, "You yourselves have seen what I did in Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt and out of the land of slavery." God's law is relational. He comes to us as a shepherd to his sheep. The interesting thing is that this law didn't establish the covenant and doesn't hold a promise for the people. The promise was made to Abraham centuries before the Ten Commandments were ever given down. And there was a time of famine, and Abraham's people went to Egypt where they were made slaves. But God was continuing to work his plan. This is the beginning of the fulfillment of that plan and promises. God reminds them that he has not forgotten his people. He lets them know that he is their God. He is on their side. God gave these people these 10 commandments because he wanted them to live in peace with each other and then be able to experience all the blessings that he had in store for them. As I said towards the beginning, we need rules. We think about any house or family or any place. If you show up and there's no rules, it's chaos very quickly. We don't do good without structure. Maybe as evidenced by the under-8 baseball practice we had Saturday with the kids. More structure is always good. But we know how we need rules. If there aren't rules, quickly it's chaos and things are terrible. And God knows this. So that's why God gave us these commandments. So we can structure ourselves. We can have a good relationship with him and with ourselves. I like this example that I found talking about how the commandments are not the basis of the relationship. The commandments are not even the promise themselves. Because we know our relationship is based in Christ, with the perfect example of God's love. And these commands are given by God's grace as well. They're kind of like a marriage. When a man and a woman get married, they make promises and set down boundaries about their relationship. Forsaking all others, I promise to love, to honor and cherish you for better and worse, for richer and poorer, in sickness and in health, and in death do us part. These are powerful words of commitment. Talking about I will not give another one, I will not love another because I'm already committed to my wife or my husband. If I only love him or her when they do what I want, if I'm only faithful when she is happy and pleasant, do I really love her? Those words we speak in the law for our marriage, they compose the framework of our relationship, just as the commandments kind of compose the framework of our relationship with God. We make those promises on those wedding days, and we do that to remind us of the relationship that we're entering into. Speaking these words on that day didn't make us love that person. That decision had been made prior to the wedding. At least I hope it was made prior to speaking those vows. But your heart had already been captured. You've already given your heart to that person before those promises were ever given or ever uttered. But we go through the wedding. We go through the vows because they're a protection for us. We say them, we mean them, we promise them. They remind us from being too selfish. They remind us of how we're supposed to be in relationship to each other. It is the same as the commandments. The commandments, by following the commandments, doesn't make God love us. God's grace and love has been given to us freely before the commandments were ever laid down. But God knows we need structure, and God knows we need rules to live by so we can experience His grace and deepen our relationship with God. So it's good that we study the commandments. I like that statement about almost everything God does that we see is because God desires a relationship with us. And these commandments help us to strengthen that relationship. By remembering there is only one God. By remembering to keep the Sabbath day holy. By the way we treat our mother and father. And honoring God in the way we treat our fellow human beings. God knows it's about relationship. And He gives us a guide on how we're supposed to be in that relationship. That's why the Ten Commandments are still important to us today. Maybe even more important if we desire a deeper relationship with God. So as we study them in the upcoming weeks, we'll look at each commandment and what they mean for us today. We'll look for a little bit of wiggle room, maybe. We all like wiggle room with the rules. How much can I get away with? Maybe there's none. Hopefully it'll be an interesting look. It'll bring the commandments to a new light. We'll look at them in a different way and see how we can apply them again to our lives to deepen our relationship with God and our relationship with each other.